Hello, my name is Russell Myers, independent for U.S. President for 2024. In recent weeks, President Biden has announced a significant release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR. This is allegedly to lower the price of oil and gas. Meanwhile, the U.S. is exporting oil at an unprecedented rate to Europe. So, really, we're giving our Strategic Petroleum Reserve to Europe. All right, so then, the U.S. is leading the charge to place a cap on oil prices from Russia and gas, while Russia has been providing oil to trading partners at a price lower than the international standard, such as WTI. Enforcing a cap on oil prices from Russia will not work. What is likely to happen is that Russia will reduce production and could completely cease exports to any country trying to enforce that cap. If that happens, the result will be a global oil shortage, driving the price of oil to prices never before seen in history. Various experts have stated that the price of oil could reach as high as $400 a barrel, which is 4 times the current price. That would mean gasoline could be $16 to $20 a gallon. Ultimately, what this means is that releasing oil from the SPR is nothing more than performative theater. It also means millions of people in numerous countries will die from hypothermia this coming winter. This does include the U.S. Or it will mean one of two alternatives: that there will be mass uprisings in the countries imposing sanctions on Russia, leading to a lifting of sanctions. Or numerous countries will voluntarily ignore U.S. sanctions and buy oil and gas from Russia at much lower prices than Western producers will be charging for the foreseeable future. One of these will be the result which I expect to occur. Even if all sanctions were lifted tomorrow, the damage has been done. It is going to take years to recover from the current sanctions on Russia and the conflict in Ukraine. Fertilizer has been in short supply because Russia is the global leading producer of fertilizer. While it is claimed that there are no sanctions on grain or fertilizer coming from Russia, oceanic freight leaving Russia has been sanctioned. Biden forced the suspension of insurance for any ship delivering or receiving cargo into or out of Russia. There has been one case of a Russian ship carrying grain being seized by Turkey. If that is repeated, Russia will simply stop exporting grain to any country where shipments may be seized, which includes most of the planet. Hundreds of millions of people are going to starve this year, possibly over 1 billion. Entire industries will cease to produce and may cease to exist. Without gas and oil, they cannot function. Yet, they will still have debts outstanding. That means tens to hundreds of millions of jobs will cease to exist. Workers will be unable to pay utility bills, leaving them without heat, possibly without water, food, or shelter. In countries like the U.S., we can expect unprecedented levels of debt default, and bankruptcy as consumers use credit to fund basic needs in the short term, hoping for an improvement in the economy and their personal finances. That improvement will not be forthcoming. Small businesses will fail. Large corporations have already begun laying off workers, and those layoffs will grow exponentially in numbers in the very near future. Pardon me. Municipalities have begun increasingly aggressively pursuing arrests and imposing fines to make up a shortfall in tax revenue. I can say this firsthand as a corrections nurse. This will spiral out of all control, as people will be unable to pay the fines and fees, leading to even more arrests. This attempt is self-defeating. As the more arrests are made, more people currently laid off will choose to spend time in jail, resulting in higher expenses for the same municipalities. After all, a person that is laid off, evicted, and struggling to feed themselves has nothing to lose by being incarcerated. Foolishly, I expect to see cities reducing public transit services and increasing fees. This will result in even more unemployment, as those with families will be unable to get to and from their jobs or accept jobs with limited public transportation. As more people are being forced to stop working, consumer spending and tax revenue will decrease further. None of this was or is necessary. Beginning 8 years ago, Ukraine should have been forced to adhere to the Minsk Agreement, which they signed regarding Donbass. Not only did the U.S. fail to force Ukraine to adhere to that agreement, the U.S. and NATO have been training Ukrainian forces, including Azov members, and providing arms to Ukraine. As the Donbass regions have been seized or liberated by Russia, take your choice of wording, to 2021 borders, Ukraine continues to refuse to negotiate peace terms. Biden has stated that this is not the time for peace talks. If not now, then when? It is possible that Russia and the Donbass regions would accept the current borders if peace talks began now. Otherwise, we can expect them to push further into Ukraine and seize more land up to the 2014 borders of Donbass. The longer this continues, the higher the death toll, the more land and resources which Ukraine will lose. The U.S. has admitted in rhetoric that any peace terms will be up to Ukraine to decide on. I have pointed out previously that Ukraine is losing military troops. They've admitted this. When you lose enough troops, weapons don't matter because there will be nobody remaining to use the weapons. If Ukrainians have to be forcibly conscripted, as they are now, it means that they have no desire to fight because they have no belief in the actions of their government. It is of no benefit to them. Once conscripted, they will be poorly trained, poorly armed, and most will be physically unfit for battle. After all, Ukraine is conscripting people up to the age of 60. They will either die or surrender immediately. Keep in mind that with each Ukrainian soldier that dies or becomes disabled due to injuries, that leaves a family with fewer resources, very likely permanently dependent on their government to provide for them. This means decades of debt for a country that has been in debt since 1992. A few highly significant additional things to note are that the Biden administration continues to sanction oil sales and production from both Iran and Venezuela, two previously prolific oil-producing countries with major oil reserves. The sanctions being imposed and the economic fallout, plus political pressures, is increasing tensions with Europe and China, India, and South America, among others. Attaining a fully green energy system is a notable and important goal. However, we will not get there in one fell swoop. It takes oil and gas to produce much of the initial equipment needed to establish such a system. It involves mining and processing metals. It involves synthetic fibers and resins, many of which are petroleum-based. It takes huge amounts of concrete for wind tower footings, which must be excavated to a considerable depth using heavy equipment which runs on gas and diesel fuel. Then all of the components must be transported multiple times during production to the end placement. Then you still have to produce and install cables, which sometimes run for hundreds of miles, along with various power distribution stations and towers. There are those who believe that there is a goal by global leaders to destroy the global economy and reduce the global population. While I would not personally go quite that far, one can easily see the evidence for that theory is overwhelming. There is definitely an agenda being pursued which is not being openly discussed. That agenda is based in unquestionable madness and nothing short of sadism. There is no way to truly predict what conditions we will be facing by 2024. I realize my own policies will have to adapt as these conditions develop. One thing I can I can state clearly and definitively as of this moment is that I would reverse many of these policies and do all I could to prevent such major national and global disruptions. I would also try to calm international tensions without armed conflicts, which only cause more debt and more death. A few final observations. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is named such for a reason. Strategic. That indicates a military purpose. The actual purpose of the SPR is to provide for the U.S. military in case of an attack on U.S. soil. It was never created for the purpose of controlling fuel prices and is nowhere near large enough to serve that purpose. If we really wanted to do that, we should nationalize the entire energy sector, which is something that I am completely in favor of. Under the circumstances, releasing large amounts of oil from the SPR reduces our national security by a significant margin, while our government is increasing tensions with the second and third largest military forces in the world who are aligned with one another militarily. Once again, I will point your attention to the fact that the people telling you that you must suffer for the sake of a war ideology are not suffering, nor will they suffer. You and I pay for their food, transportation, medical care, housing, and much higher wages than you probably make. They will not lose their income, They will not be evicted. They will not have their utilities turned off in summer or winter. They will not count out change to fill their gas tank. They will not go hungry. They will not go without medical care. They will not go bankrupt due to medical bills or student loans. They will not lose their life savings, and they will not have to live on insufficient Social Security. Please share this article or video. Talk about these subjects. Help expand awareness of this campaign. If you can, please donate whatever you can to help expand this campaign. I need all the help you can offer in any way you can. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good day.